Good morning, guys. Hope you're doing well. Today I want to talk about the processing of the loss of a friend to suicide. So it's been about 3 years since one of my friends, Pat, died by suicide, and just processing his passing has been a journey. And I felt like this is one of the topics that um, I think society doesn't really talk about. And, if it can be of any relatability to anybody out there who um, maybe you're processing the loss of a loved one or friend to suicide recently, within the last year or 2 or 3 years, or um, maybe this can help with your grief journey, or um, if not anything else, maybe it can just provide some level of relatability. As I recount this journey, I'm not trying to speak for people as a whole. I'm really just speaking for myself. And so I just want that to be abundantly clear. So, year one, I would say the word I would use is chaos. There's a lot of emotions going on. Obviously, number one being grief. The loss of someone you were good friends with, and missing their presence in your life is tough. I think especially thinking about the, there are certain times or events where they would have been there, and them not being there is starkly, you're starkly aware of that. Um, I can remember, so Pat at the time was a senior in college and was in a college choir that I was in, and there's a concert in April that happens, and I remember being excited to, see um, all the people I knew that were in the class of 2019 who were seniors. Um, I was a junior when they were freshmen, and so um, seeing them as seniors was cool for me to see that journey. Um, and just not seeing him there um, was tough. Was tough, and obviously in subsequent years, whenever you're hanging out with a group of people that Pat would have hung out with or could have been at, it's tough. Um, the hardest thing is really just grappling with the fact that you'll never see him again alive. Um, that your last interaction with him was your last interaction with him. Um, the second thing I think I would say after grief is guilt. Um, and, to know someone came into your life, had deep conversations with you, was a good friend um, to you, and not that this is your job as a friend, but to and this is again is the way I was thinking back in year one, but for them not to see the light of life um, was tough pill to swallow. you know as a friend, you naturally feel guilty in terms of not feeling like you did a good enough job as a friend. You go back and you evaluate, the friendship and what you could have done better to help them and support them. I can still remember going to Pat's wake and apologizing to his mother, Christine, there, uh, and just being like, I apologize for not being a better friend. That's how ingrained the guilt aspect was with me. Um, I think the one of the other things that you deal with in year one is just it's a reflection point of your care towards your friendships in life. I remember after Pat passed, meeting up with 3 different people I normally wouldn't have, um, and just check. Obviously talking about Pat, and then obviously checking in on them as well. Um, it was a reflection on how much you were checking in on people. Had it been 6 months since you last checked in, or had it been a month? Um, and it's tough as an adult, as you have more responsibility and less time than you did in college and in high school. Um, so, for me, I think even with that, I think you have to give yourself grace, because, from the way I look at it is, for most of us, we really just have time for our best friends. Um, and that's the amount of time that we help, like, in a healthy amount, can give. But I would say, as much as you can, even just checking in with people that are, maybe not best friends, but just, in that friends level, just trying to do your best, to keep in touch, um, is a good thing to try and challenge yourself to do. I think the fourth thing I dealt with was um, recounting why he did it. Um, as friends, you go over all the variables, you talk with each other, you hash out all the stories that you all knew, talk about the signs and what would have predicted, him being at this, struggling on this level. Um, I think a certain amount of that is healthy in terms of thinking about warning signs, for the future, and if other friends exhibit similar signs. I think some of that is hard to understand because you'll never understand it. And mental health is an illness. Yeah. I think year 2 has a lot of the same emotions: sadness, guilt, and mourning. Um, I think for most people, their relationship with guilt gets better, but I think it's still there. Um, the learning lesson I would say from this is, if you've been through any adversity, um, and someone else is going through a similar struggle, I would encourage you to talk to them about that. Um, whether that's, you've gone through your parents being divorced, you're LGBTQ, you're an only child, you're a certain race, whatever it is, however small you think it is, you never know the impact that can help in helping someone else's journey, to just have someone else that's been through something similar. Um, my number one regret in looking back at the whole situation is never having conversations with Pat about mental health. Um, as someone who's dealt with it throughout my life and has been suicidal at points in my life, I wish, in hindsight, I had those talks. I'm not sure if Pat had anybody that he could talk to at that level. Um, and me having that knowledge, it would have been good for both of us. Um, again, you have to give yourself grace. At that time, 2015 to 2017 is when I had the most interactions with Pat. Mental health wasn't as open as it is today. And I think, guys especially felt very soft and very, we don't talk about our feelings. Um, but, for me, if anyone out there is listening that has a friend that deals with mental health issues, and, you have as well, I would encourage you to maybe have those conversations with your friends. You never know the impact one person's support can help, or can have. Um, the second major thing I would say I deal with in terms of guilt is that weekend my senior year roommates and I were in Boston doing a reunion. We were 20 minutes away from BC, and we invited some members of the people that were still at BC, but we didn't invite Pat, and that still eats at me. I mean, it would have been interesting if he could have been in an environment of support and love, and if things would have ended up different. Um, you know, I, it's, I guess it's always something you'll deal with. And I think what I try to tell myself is your job as a friend is not to keep your friends alive, but only to provide love, support, and um, suggest resources. But that's always tough. I think year two also really shows how people deal with grief differently. One of my friends has gone to Pat's gravesite multiple times. I myself haven't been able to go once. I just kind of don't want to. Mainly because I don't know what my emotions will be. I don't know what that says about me versus my friend. Maybe, whereas I think he likes that opportunity to, have a conversation with Pat and feel, Pat's spirit. Maybe for me, I really mentally don't want to accept Pat's death, maybe in some ways, and that's why I'm not going. Um, Regardless, I mean, I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to grieve. I just think it's, we all grieve differently, based on our personalities. Um, the other thing that's interesting is like talking about him is bittersweet. I remember one of my friends talking about a funny story with him, um, and we were all laughing, and then, 30 seconds later, there was quite a bit of an awkward silence because we all were like, "Are we allowed to have laugh with joyful memories of Pat, or is that bad?" Or I guess the tragedy of his death always comes to mind. If you are someone um, that wants a separate time for joyfulness, I think what's interesting is doing a separate celebration of life might be a solution. For my friend Trevor, who also passed away by suicide, there was a celebration of life that was done last year, and that was really nice. Um, because even though it was emotional, we tried to focus on the good memories of Trevor and giving ourselves time for that. Um, just a suggestion. I think that can, I think that along with a memorial um, can be good counterbalancing um, in terms of, obviously recognizing our sadness, but also recognizing the joy that we had with and the impact that that person had on us. Year three, I would say the acceptance of the reality of what's happened really kicks in. Um, there's a lot more word choice of when Pat died or when Pat passed away, whereas I think people struggled with that language in years prior. Um, Even though the acceptance has come, I would say the pain is still there. You know, it's still as sharp as it was, in those times that you're remembering him on the anniversary of his passing or his birthday. I don't know if that part ever gets easier. Um, I think, especially with a mental health related death, year three might be the time when people start, going from grief into action, and pulling up our sleeves and trying to better the situation, and trying to create the world the individual would have wanted in terms of destigmatizing mental health, talking about suicide more, whether that's through, fundraising, walks, whatever it is, that also comes in play. I think this was the first year, and I have to give credit to his mom, Christine, that I recognized, trying to separate Pat from his illness. Pat's mom made a great point, Christine, that Pat had made 2 doctor's appointments 2 days before he passed. And that was a recognition that Pat loved life. And Pat recognized like his brain was going awry, and he wanted to take the steps to make sure he was good. Um, that helped a lot, in recognizing and understanding the illness aspect of mental health. Um, I think the other thing that I've realized is like just remember that Pat like wouldn't want us to be sad. Pat was a joyful human being, and Pat wouldn't want us to be sad. You know, um, and in that vein, I think trying to add his spirit to your life is an interesting challenge. For me, um, Pat was a very kind person. He wasn't someone that was like a cliquey person. He could fit in or talk to anybody, and he loved everyone. And his grace, in terms of his smile and happiness interacting with others and learning others' stories. That's a part that I feel like I've tried to add to my life. Being more patient when I'm meeting new people, being more gracious, seeing the beauty in people. All those things are things that I am taking Pat's spirit and adding it to my life, and in that way I think I'm keeping him alive. Um, that's the way I look at it. Processing loss and grief. What I would say is there's no expediting the process. You have to go through what you have to go through. You're a human being with emotions. Where I am today, I couldn't have been in year one or year two, and I wouldn't have wanted to be. I think going through, the years of grief, I needed that, that was necessary for processing. And as I said, I think remembering to separate the illness from the person, remembering that they were joyful and would want you to be joyful is something to remember. And I think, whatever impact or action you can make, and, destigmatizing mental health, adding an aspect of their personality to your life, I think are all good ways to keep their spirit alive. Let me know what you guys think. If there's anything else that you all have thought about, if you're someone who has also lost someone to suicide, um, and just yeah, let me know. And thank you guys. Appreciate it.